Hey there, internets. So, take 3 actually. I was almost done recording and it was almost midnight, and then my phone gave me grief. So, we're doing an after a delayed recording Saturday Night Rant here. So, kind of the first thing to talk about. Elections are Tuesday. Get your ballots in. Vote. My ballot got completed tonight. I'll probably hang on to it until just about the last minute. Some people are suggesting people do that. That's all I'm going to say, so that we don't run afoul of YouTube rules. And we got to adjust the camera there, our phone. So get that in there. As has been for years, no Democrat got my vote, with my knowledge. I think the last time I voted for a Democrat, there was no Republican running, and that even Republicans thought highly of that particular Democrat because he was so ethical, which is rare. Can't say that about any of the current statewide. So, and don't for a minute think that it's just the senator or the representative or the governor. If you're someplace where you think that things aren't going to go your way, you gotta stop the cat from scratching. I'll deal with you later and get you what you want. So, but this, your state legislative races, county commissioner races, they are hugely important because we still have 3 branches. So even if you got a bad governor like we do, you can flip even one house of your state legislature, one chamber. So sometimes can be just a few seats. You can change the entire balance of power in your state. If we could flip enough seats in Washington to have pro-gun representatives or legislators, our attorney general's desire to start banning some kinds of weapons, done. Not going to happen. And same for this worthless governor we have. So do not let your ballot sit. Get it in early, get it in at the last minute, just get it in. If you're someplace where you're not registered to vote, in a lot of cases you can vote. A lot of times you can register up till the day of. I can't speak to the particulars. Check with your local election officials. And for the record, it was a very soft ace bandage that just let the cat know she was doing something she shouldn't. So that's the big one there. The other thing big thing that was big in the news was Twitter. So Elon Musk took it over. He tried to appease this week the woke cult, meeting with a bunch of their people. Now, meeting with a bunch of the representatives to talk about content moderation and hate speech, which most of them define as anything that disagrees with Democrats on anything. If you say, I don't think we should be spending federal government dollars on studying transgender people in Pakistan, they call it hate speech. If you say we should be spending government dollars on so many pieces of heavy machinery, cut the federal vehicle fleet, they'll call it hate speech because they have no arguments. When your argument is reduced to they're stupid, they're uneducated, they're bought off, they're grifters, they're racist, they're homophobes, they're sexists, and that's the entirety of your argument, which one of the guys that Elon Musk needs to fire from Twitter ran around back when Obama was president saying you can't say it, you hate it because of his party, it has to be because of his race. Has it ever occurred to you that you have that terrible a set of arguments? So, it proved to be fruitless because they went about trying to do a boycott of Twitter anyway, and all these advertisers are pulling out. And so, hey, projected revenues down, mass layoffs. He said, hey, all of you, and it was kind of almost perfect Northwest passive aggressive. We're either going to send you a email saying you're here or that you're going to be moving on. And these Twitter people, I don't like the idea of celebrating people losing their jobs. Now, some of them probably, honestly, probably deserve it. When the people that were behind a lot of the shadow banning, the trying to make it so you can't say certain naughty words for describing people that want to show explicit material to minors, can't call that out, they probably deserve it. But there's a lot of people there that are probably just trying to make ends meet. But there's 7,500 employees. I don't know if you need that many, but they had this gal go in with and say, here's my typical day. And she started off with some sort of fancy coffee. It sounds like provided by the company. And they had a little meeting that could be all soundproof. You could reserve for your meeting. And then she found a yoga studio and a meditation room. I got news for you guys. Now, maybe this person's on salary and is going to work her works whatever hours she's going to work, gets her job done, goes home, or screws off, or just needs to be there in case something comes up. I don't know what this gal did. Honestly, if I was Elon Musk, I would have hired her to go in, get hired on at Twitter, and find out what was really going on there. And then when he walks in, say, Mr. Musk, let me show you on video what I found. That would have been a good use of an employee, honestly. You should find out, because people say and do things that you wouldn't expect when they don't know who's watching. And if you think that's just the new employee who doesn't know anything, might be rather interesting. I mean, you should go through and they look like they're a company provided lunch. Somebody was making all these nice little salads. Not that, most of us want to eat salad. My wife does. I can do without salad. But there's all these nice little salads. Somebody had to make those. And then at the end of the day, they had wine on tap. Now, I would hope that they would say, you can't touch the wine until you get, until your shift ends. But when they're putting out that kind of money, no wonder Twitter's probably losing money. I suspect that wine is probably going to go away. So they're getting 3 months warning. They keep their health insurance. They have to abide by certain policies. And during that 3 months warning, all those people being let go don't have to work. Which means they could get a job that does not violate Twitter policies to go along with it. They could go line up the next job without wondering, having to line up when they quit. They could even say, hey, I'll be able to start with you, and just means I don't keep my Twitter paycheck. They could even time it. I almost timed it when I left my prior employer. And some of the stuff of people dropping, isn't that shocking. Now, when I went through that, working at my prior employer, going from Eagle Hardware to Lowe's, it seemed like a lot of the Eagle people got pushed out, especially at the management level. And there was a lot of stressors there, and some of the Lowe's managers were a little less than impressive at the time. Others were good, decent people, it seemed. But some of this would be normal transitions. But when you got a very bloated workforce, possibly, and a lot of the millennial, younger types seem to think that work isn't a thing when you get hired to go somewhere. I was taught otherwise. Thank you, Dad, for encouraging me to work as a teenager. My first thing was mowing lawns. I was mowing a pretty good amount of lawns for a teenager to be bringing home for money. And somebody asked me if I was dealing drugs because I had so much cash in my wallet one time. And again, relative for a teenager, I think I had like $50 in my wallet or something. It was almost all stripper singles. There was a $20 bill and a couple of a $5 bill and a whole bunch of single of ones. But when you have that much extra redundancy, and of course you let go a lot of people in the content moderation and there was 2 or 3 similar things that he let go. So those people are gone. So hopefully he might say, look, we're going to fix it. And he may need to get if he's going to have people on the left, he needs to have equal representation from those on the right, and their policies need to say, 3/4 of people need to ban somebody, or it can't be just a bare majority, because you're always going to find somebody that will shift one way or the other. And you can't have, if it's a bare majority to do that, one holdout can make it real easy to, one person either having no spine or being a holdout. If it had to be unanimous, one person being a holdout would be enough. So hopefully it would be something pretty egregious, like actually engage, threatening violence, that would make them want to do that. So we'll see what happens at Twitter. But those people are not getting just cut loose, if you think that's what's going on. And then, the last kind of thing, almost forgot. I mentioned this when I did the first recording, and I try and do these in one take, except that the camera just kind of cut off. That's why I went there to it ended with a third take. First it was a cat causing a problem. I have a minute in and so on. In that thing about the legislative races, sometimes you get people that don't tell the whole truth. Now, it could be somebody trying to tear the person down, could be somebody trying to pick them up again, but since I've got a lot of local people that listen, we got a guy in the 10th district who said, the guy named Clyde Shavers, running as a Democrat. A friend of mine says, I know this guy, I'm standing with him, he volunteers at this play, at the local charity thing. The guy's father says a lot of the guy's story ain't what it's cut out, all made out to be, either about where he lives, because apparently he's living in a bed and breakfast according to the father, and then his fiance is living with him there now, but she would have had to move from California and quit her job, saying his military service isn't what it's up to be, and he has no connection to something like Whidbey Island, or the 10th legislative district. I'm gonna be honest with you. If we had a convention of states, not only should we have a term limits, is probably going to be the only thing that comes out of it, but whoever gets involved in that needs to make a rule that says you have to have a certain number of years living in your state if you want to be a senator, or living with your residence in your current district boundaries for a certain number of years if you want to be a U.S. rep. It should be the same for a legislator. It can get less each time. You got to be a resident of the U.S. for 14 years total, in addition to a natural-born citizen. So if you're a military brat or something like that, you can't just spend your entire time out of the country, because you're still a natural-born citizen. If you were bouncing around foreign, or your parents were in foreign service and you just kind of followed them through embassies and whatnot, you actually have to live inside the United States. Well, shouldn't you have to live in your state? Shouldn't you? I mean, that would have killed Dr. Oz's candidacy, honestly, but so it would have killed Hillary Clinton's. How does somebody move to a state and then claim to represent it? How does somebody move to a certain legislative district to try and flip it blue or flip it red, either way, but flip it blue in this case, when you should run where you live and have lived there for a while? And that was one of his father's things. Apparently, he told his father that that was where he could win and he would run there. And the guy said the Democratic Party in Washington, residents of Whidbey Island, want him to flip it blue. Residents of Whidbey Island want him to come there to do that? I highly doubt it. Not being totally forthcoming about giving a different story than the father gives about his Japanese mother's immigration story. Apparently, according to the father, she was a student on a student visa, and adult, met an American, married an American, stayed here, all legal and fine. And he's trying to say she came for a better life, like she was coming from a destitute country or something. And one person's right here. It could be that neither is 100% right, but person on the route that I run for deliveries told me, we were talking about, I'm trying to have kids. His son's now having kids. He said a father's job is never done. I can say that, my dad gave me advice, told me when I did something wrong, even as an adult. And a parent should always have unconditional love for their child and be willing to take them back. But that does not mean, love does not mean approving of everything they do, not calling them out when they're doing something wrong, not telling them not to do something wrong, especially if you handle it privately first before calling them out publicly on it, which, according to the father, he tried to do. And it's in the Linwood Times. I'm going to post it for anybody that's interested. And of course, no father or son should be expected to denounce their son or denounce their father. I mean, strangely, it was Rush Limbaugh who told people to calm down over Johnny Jihad when his parents went to getting him lawyers after he was brought back to the United States and placed on trial. And he said, look, any reasonable parent would do exactly what they're doing, which is getting their son the best representation legally. Doesn't matter that his son had betrayed his country or had adopted an ideology that said his father needed to die because Johnny Jihad, Jonathan Lynn's father, was gay, had split up with his mom and gotten into a gay relationship. Didn't matter. His father was still seeking to get him help, and that's what a father should do. And, just like I got into it with somebody who was on the conservative side, wanted Rand Paul to denounce his father for not being pro-life enough. No, I'm not going to ask your father to do that. Which, going on to the pro-life thing, NPR sent a woman to an abortion clinic to find out what went on there. And the pro-abortionists are trying to make it look like, oh, it's just a minor procedure, it's nothing, it's very minor, but it's very important for women to be able to get this, and it's not traumatizing, and on and on and on. And yet they say it's deeply personal. Well, they did allow NPR to record audio from an abortion procedure, I think at 14 weeks. And Matt Walsh played part of it. He said, we're not going to play the whole thing. You got to seek that out if you want to listen to it. But you're not going to hear the machine murdering the baby, killing the baby. Even turning the machine on was enough, though, for my wife and I. We were having dinner while we listened to it. We have no kids. It's okay to do that when you don't have kids. We had to stop dinner, and I had to comfort her because we're struggling to have kids. And to see someone throw a child away, and we may have to adopt in order to have kids. We're not there yet, but we may have to. And I will be the first to say that people should walk their talk. If you have no kids and you are well-to-do and you are conservative and pro-life, why aren't you one of the people adopting? You have the means to support the child. You have the ability to pay for child care. Or maybe you could have a parent home with the child, even if you're working from home. If you're a commentator or something. We need to walk our talk as pro-life people. We need to make it easier to adopt as pro-life people. I said, there's other ways of advancing the pro-life movement than just banning abortions nationally or in a particular state or constitutional amendments in a state. Walk your talk right now. Show that we will take these children in. But my wife was devastated even listening to the machine starting up for about 2 seconds. I had to I stopped, paused it, had to comfort her because it upset her. And then I skipped to the next segment on Matt Walsh's show yesterday. So this would be his Friday show. And I really wish, I commented to the effect that he should have just cut it off sooner. If you think abortion is justifiable, go listen to the real version of it. If you think abortion is justifiable, go watch a video where they show some of the grisly details of it, especially the late-term abortions. If you're going to think it's okay to leave it legal at 8 months, go watch that stuff. I watched it one time and it was enough for me, because I felt as though I needed to say it so that when someone says you don't know what goes on, I say, yes, I saw the video. And then you justify it. Because for me, it boils down to one thing. When does life begin? Logically, it can only begin at conception. Because if you say it begins at any other point, you have to ask, what's the difference between a baby born premature that survives and that baby that you just aborted? And understand, they have pushed medical technology to the point where they can take animal embryos almost or right up to term, and they haven't birthed them. So you have to ask the question: if they can do that with them, there's going to have a point they could do it with a human embryo. So what happens when you're sitting there in the NICU and you flip the switch, you flip the breaker, children die? It's murder. What's the difference between one of those children in a NICU and a child aborted late in a pregnancy? What's the difference when our technology gets to where and this is where you get into the just because you can does not mean you should, I grant. But some people are desperate to have children. If a person could afford it and say, you can have biological children of your own, but your wife can't, they won't implant in your wife, but we can grow that embryo in an incubator, and in 9 months you can pick up your baby. What then? What is the crime when somebody flips the switch to kill it intentionally? They're not talking about an accident. That would be equivalent to a miscarriage. And it can only be a conception, because if you let things go by nature, if the embryo implants and something like 70% don't make it, that's not what we're talking about. The embryo that under the normal course of circumstances implants. If you let nature take its course, you're going to get a baby. At what point does life begin if you can't say it? Because if you say first breath, then what's the difference between that child that you abort at 8 months and the one in the NICU? Or at 22 weeks, which is currently considered to be viable. There was a time when 22 weeks the child was dead on arrival. Was it not a life then? Because it wasn't viable, you had to wait till 25 weeks? So logically, it has to be conception. I don't even need religion to make that argument. I have a friend that's been posting this all the time. Every time she posts these memes about it, it's always in the context of it must be a religious argument and claiming separation of church and state. I don't need religion. Just a little bit of logic. So, if you're going to justify it, you go watch that video, or listen to that video, and then ask if that's okay. You go watch the ones where you see the grisly details, the results, and ask if that's okay. Because that's where this goes to. Is when does life begin? No one's talking about miscarriage situations where it's effectively the same techniques. No one's talking about a situation where an embryo or a child doesn't make it. That's a miscarriage. No one's talking about the situations where the mother's life is actually going to end if she does not get an abortion. Everyone talks about ectopic pregnancies as an example, but I've got a couple of friends that would be automatic high-risk pregnancies, possibly to where the doctor would say, we can save neither you nor the child. I have a friend that's in that condition. We are not talking about that. We're talking about a woman gets pregnant because she was irresponsible, couldn't keep her legs together, couldn't make the man wear a condom, didn't use birth control, didn't use enough birth control, or the chance that there's always that slim minor chance that a pregnancy could occur, even though you took every other precaution short of abstinence. but you don't want the child. If you can't accept that responsibility, you're not responsible enough for sex, as far as I'm concerned. Some would say if you're not able to get married beforehand, you're not responsible enough. I'm not going to go to that point. That's getting into that religious argument. If you can't accept the consequences of your actions, you're not responsible enough to take those actions. But that was just something that stuck out. It is about personal responsibility. It is about when does life begin, and once it's a life, you can't ethically end it unless another life is in danger. So, and I can accept rape as a legal excuse, even though I don't like it, because somebody is having their rights violated then. But when you put that child in danger, you're responsible for that child's situation until that child comes to be. So, that all being said, make sure you get those ballots in, and until then, y'all take care.